A panel discussion that is lined up for you up next, and of course it is about open and connected banking, the future of financial innovation. And for this, I would like to invite our moderator onto the stage, Ms. Srishti Dixit from ONS FinServe, and of course the speakers are there as well. Srishti, let me introduce you to her first, and she is the founder and managing director of ONS FinServe Limited with a dynamic background in finance. Srishti is a new generation entrepreneur in the field of finance economics. So welcome, Srishti. She'll be moderating the panel for us. And of course, the guests, Mr. Zeeshan Sajid Amin. He's the head of growth at Media Links with a proven track record in driving revenue, retention, and engagement. Zeeshan excels in the online and user acquisition space. There's also Mohamed Saieed. He is the co-founder. Is it Mohamed Saieed or Mohamed Saieed? Please clear me on this. Saeed, okay. So Mr. Mohamed Saieed is the co-founder and sales and operations manager of Potentia Systems with a focus on inbound operations and technology strategies. Mr. Mohammed enables clients to enhance brand awareness, generate leads, and acquire strategic customers. Welcome, Mr. Mohamed Saieed. And of course, we have Ms. Saumya Ranjith, Executive Director at the Greenback Capital Limited. Her area of expertise includes, but not restricted to, internal audit, financial reporting, stakeholder management, and customer engagement. So please welcome Saumya onto the stage as well. So over to you guys, over to Srishti to moderate this panel for us. Thank you so much for coming down.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the panel on Open and Connected Banking, the Future of Financial Innovation. My name is Srishti Dixit, and I'm your moderator for this panel. We got a very kind introduction, I represent ONS FinServe. We have a booth out back, so if you want to learn about what we do, please do meet us. So today, among us, we have an impressive panel of very interesting professionals who come from finance and fintech space, and they all bring different insights and ideas about the topic under discussion today. Among us, just again introducing, we have Zeeshan Sajid Amin, who is the head of growth at Media Links. Welcome, Zeeshan.
Thank you.
And we have Mohamed Saieed, Managing Director of Potentia Systems. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And finally, Saumya Ranjith, who is the Executive Director at Greenback Capital Limited.
Thank you.
Welcome, Saumya. So open banking refers to the use of APIs to share financial data with third-party people. And these third-party agencies either provide certain services or some technology or some app and provide certain services to the bank's customers. Now, in this entire ecosystem, the bank customers gain a lot of value-added services and gain from this. However, the type of services that they have and the type of data sharing that is involved, this can definitely not be shared in an open platform, or it cannot be available publicly. In fact, these type of data sharing can only happen on the express request of such customers. So open banking provides an infrastructure which is technological in nature, and also the legal framework under which this express consent-driven services can be shared. So let's learn from our panelists for today. My first question is to you, Zeeshan.
Yes.
What do you think are the key driving factors behind the push for open and connected banking, and how do you think it can foster financial innovation?
Right. So, I think this question is not for me. I think this is for somebody else.
Is this for you? I'm sorry.
No worries. So, I'll tell you. So, with regards to fintech apps, my personal domain for media links is performance and acquiring users on performance basis, quality users on fintech apps. This is what we do for a living. And, as any fintech app, working with so many of them in the region, there is always a scenario when we are acquiring users of what you are perhaps when you are saying that when the app is in the open, there is always chances of fraud in that, and fraud is a very major concern of the industry, in the fintech industry specifically. How we sort it, there needs to be, clients need to know when they're working with agencies, they need to have experience working with fintech, and they should know how to acquire users from sources which are not fraud.
All right, so definitely this is a platform where data sharing happens and there is a possibility of fraud, and it has to be done in a way that these type of systems are protected and are definitely free of any fraud.
Yes.
My next question is to you, Saumya. Where do you think and believe that the most value creation in the entire system lies?
So when we speak about open finance, not just open banking, it's currently in a flux. It's very difficult. I would not say too early or too late, but it's very difficult to identify who the real winners are. And the way or at the pace at which open finance is accelerating, the entire global financial industry is changing. The way we are banking is changing. And it's kind of bringing increased pressure on the incumbent banks to kind of reevaluate their business strategy. And they have to now be contended with margin sharing. They have to make this digital, the payouts to the digital players so that this is kind of a mandatory part of a customer acquisition for them now. Talking about value creation, we all know that the long-term value creation happens only when a larger set of stakeholders are focused on, not just the first set of people or the ABC process that has immediate repercussions on the system, but the broader set of stakeholders are focused on. That's where the maximum value creation happens. And an open ecosystem really promotes innovation and competition. And if I have to give a number to this sense, then it is said that roughly around 1% to 5% of the GDP is the potential value of open financial data. And that we know is kind of really huge. And to even tap this, value and potential, that's why we see a lot of non-banking players, a lot of non-financial oriented players coming into this financial services industry and applying for these financial services license. Be it e-commerce players, be it ride-hailing apps, any set of activities that have some sort of digital behavior or online activity is coming into this new ecosystem. The intent currently is to integrate the financial services into the daily activities of consumer. That's the value creation we are talking about. And even consumer these days, right, they understand where the value is coming out of this open ecosystem. It is kind of helping them to, tap down or calm their innate conservatism on data sharing. They know that at click of a button now they are able to see all their spending habits, they are able to see their threshold, they are able to take debt-related decisions quite easily with this open ecosystem that is coming into picture. So if we were to talk about value creation, it's not limited to one or two players, but it is across the ecosystem, I must say.
Certainly. The value creation from something like open banking is not limited, as Saumya correctly mentions, not to just banks or the customers, but it goes beyond these realms. So let's talk about how you interestingly mentioned, Saumya, traditional banking, and definitely there is an impact of this open banking on how the traditional banks are operating in today's world. So traditional banks are basically those financial institutions who have been providing banking services since many, many years. And given this space is fast evolving, it's absolutely, I think, necessary for the traditional banks to actually be ahead of the curve and be looking into open banking on their own. So my next question is to Mohamed. Mohammed, what do you think are the potential implications of open banking for traditional banks? And how can they adapt and remain competitive in this landscape?
It's a very nice question. I believe the whole world now are changing from documentation to digital process, digital transformation, and now the AI take a portion of the full ecosystem all over the world. Kind of adaptation, especially for the world, third world countries where I'm personally coming from. I'm from Egypt. So I think it is very hard to the old generations to adapt such a technology, and there is a challenge for those people who are providing such technology, especially the people in fintech, and how the banks are going fast to catch up with the technology enhancements. So there is a potential now, I said before, for those kind of institutions to give like a small programs for those people who are not capable to deal with the technology, somehow to educate them and to help them how to use the new platforms. So this is simply before we go into your question. I believe now the adaptation in the Middle East, especially in the Gulf, Saudi and UAE, has been so fast. And even I personally had an experience with some clients, especially in the banking sectors in UAE, how far they are going beyond and they are trying to cope up with the latest technology in the market. Ex-client is a very interesting client and loyal client for us. He's always asking, guys, we need to cope up with the latest ideas in the market. We need to cope up with the latest technology in the market. So I believe it's kind of a vision towards the leaders, how they can move fast to implementing the technology to this industry. And I believe now there is a huge potential into the Middle East for non-GCC countries and the rest of the third world countries, to all the people working in the fintech and the system integrators to go have a call with them, knocking the doors to implement the latest technology. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mohammed. Very interesting insights you shared, particularly talking about how you have observed that different banks in UAE or GCC for that matter are going beyond what is their traditional practices and innovating and then tying up with the fintech companies in order to innovate. This is a very interesting observation because if we look at the world and how open banking is evolving in today's world, we observe that the obvious fintech leaders like US and the UK are already having an open banking system which is already implemented. Interestingly, countries like Turkey and India also have a framework which has already been implemented. You interestingly mentioned GCC, and you have seen how banks are doing great things and making strides in this area. But one observation is also that there are actually no frameworks which have come in this region, and the approach this region is taking is actually the banks are leading the way. So maybe a framework which is regulator-based is one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is to have the banks take the lead. Next question is to you, Saumya. Saumya, what do you think? Do you think there are opportunities when traditional banks open up to tech giants and new age fintech companies?
Yes, definitely. I think it's very imperative for these traditional banks to now consider this adoption of open banking as against their initial views of likelihood of fintech emerging as one of the major players in this industry. And interestingly, the flow of collaboration between banks and fintechs is not one way. That is, fintech players approaching banks, knowing that yes, they are the information powerhouse, they have all the transaction information. The flow is not one way, interestingly. It is also a lot of banks are approaching fintech players knowing that yes, the gold mine of information is also here. One interesting case that comes on top of my mind is collaboration between Citibank and Paytm in India, wherein the collaboration was not only interesting because what actual outcome was, but also how it emerged in the first place. So just to narrate a short story, Paytm was Citibank's commercial banking client, and later they also advised them on their Ant Financial Investment and investment by Alibaba Group. But later, Paytm wallet got integrated with Citi Online and Citi Mobile Banking app just to give a seamless experience to their customer. But what followed that was even more interesting, that Paytm first card was launched, and that was a white label solution by Citibank. It kind of widened their credit card customer base to all new digital customer base of Paytm. So the thought process here was that, to identify the potential customer base that Paytm holds and assess their credit worthiness through a tool that was kind of jointly developed by Citi and Paytm. And to understand the magnitude of this collaboration, an Indian company being approached by a multinational bank and providing a white label solution itself speaks a lot of benefits that such collaborations can bring to the table, right? And it's not that fintech and banks are only collaborating. There are a lot of banks, their digital arms are collaborating. Banks across jurisdictions are collaborating. We being expat, especially India. In India, we need to open NRO accounts back there, and there's a lot of physical ID verification process that kind of sometimes gets irritating for us. So one of the leading UAE banks collaborated with the bank in India to make this process quite seamless for their customers. They kind of went through a digital onboarding process, digital ID verification process. So that's quite interesting that we are not only being limited to individual customer base, physical verification. We are bringing digital into all areas in the ecosystem. So I think this collaboration is not only inevitable, but definitely it's a need of the hour.
Definitely. Interesting insight, Saumya. So you did mention about there being certain challenges which are being then addressed by open banking. However, open banking and implementation of open banking has challenges of their own. So let's talk a little bit about the certain challenges that our panelists today here feel that open banking implementation has in today's world. So Mohamed, if I can ask you, what role does, in your opinion, data privacy and security play in open banking? And how can we ensure that customer data is protected in an interconnected banking system?
Nice question again. I believe, first of all, each country has to meet the regulations. What I mean is, as a client, whenever I go for any bank or any applications in fintech world now, I have to meet the central bank regulations. And surprisingly, most of the central banks in the region where we live in, the regulation is completely different. So there is a challenge from the user perspective. But for the fintech providers and banking providers perspective, the most important then is the data encryption and how the data will be protected. So most of the providers now into the Middle East has done some authentication, authorization, double factor authentication for their process to try to protect the data as much as they can. Some implementing the data protection access control, so not everybody on the process of the payments or the process of opening the bank account itself, so everybody can control the data or to see the data. Securing the infrastructure, I believe the most big example now into the Middle East, especially region that I'm coming from, is the UAE. They are invested a lot into the infrastructure, especially in the banking sector and the central bank itself. So most of the data are so encrypted, so safe. It is a lot of the infrastructure. Yes, there is some small incidents here and there, but we can say that from the worldwide percentage of the hacking and the fraud cases, UAE is the best. So I believe from my point of view, the data encryption is very important, investing in the infrastructure is very important, giving unlimited access for the users inside the organizations or outside the organization is very important. And again, to the first point we discussed before, the awareness and education of the clients and customer end user is much more important.
Perfect. Great thoughts there. Definitely, it's protection of data is needs to be taken care of from multiple perspectives, and including the end customers, the banks themselves, and fintech companies making certain additions of their own, data encryption, and certain many other things which I don't understand, but definitely a lot more to it. But thank you so much for your insights. And we move on to our next question now, which is to Saumya. Saumya, is the applicability, in your opinion, of open banking limited to developed countries? Because we see that a lot of developing countries are still not on that path yet. I mean, some are, and it's not an exclusive, exhaustive list, but we see this always starting from the developed spaces. So what do you think? Is the applicability limited to the developed space, or it also should be looking at the developing countries?
So what I believe is the maximum potential of open banking definitely lies in the developing economies rather. So as even like Said was mentioning that, the whole world countries are also evaluating digital adoption. So definitely the pace would not be so accelerated as it is in the developed economies. But yes, the potential definitely lies more in developing economies because the financial inclusion is kind of in a very early stages there, and to understand this part that the financial inclusion is not just having a mobile app which kind of store and help us to transfer funds quite easily. It does not quite end there. It does not automatically kind of equate to financial inclusion. It definitely goes beyond that. So open banking kind of helps to provide this unbanked and underbanked population with such kind of digital tools that kind of open the space for customer base that does not really have so much of credit history. Like you and me, who are kind of new entrant into a country, we do not have a credit history to us, right? And when we approach lenders, they kind of evaluate our credit worthiness basis this. But open banking kind of have opened up this space by bringing new factors, bringing new tools into the picture, right? For example, our rent payments can be considered as one of the factors for creditworthiness. Our payroll data or any analytics around recurring payments can be considered as one of the factors to assess the creditworthiness. So these are the tools that are kind of being analyzed by developing economies, and I think it's just a matter of time, and they'll definitely come up to pace with where the developed economies are now.
Definitely. Saumya, an interesting point that you mentioned is accessibility, and accessibility not only in terms of bringing banking to the underbanked, but also to bring better products and better banking products to those who already have access to banking, but certainly can use better banking facilities. So accessibility is something that all the world leaders today are talking about, and open banking definitely is looking in that direction. So let's talk now about the uses and the success stories of open banking that we have seen until now, and what do we think that it can be used for in the future. So Mohamed, can open banking benefit SMEs, the small and medium enterprises, and individual customers in terms of accessing better financial services and products?
Yes, big time. And the biggest example that I'm in front of one of the biggest institutes and organizations that has been got a lot of approvals from the IFC now in Dubai and they will provide huge solutions that can help the small and medium enterprises, even micro SMEs. So I believe the whole world will be changing very soon, especially when it comes to the fintech industry and the small institutes as a banking giving facilities, open banks and stuff. So if you even open your mobile now and check on your application, either Android App Store or Apple Store, so just type finance, fintech. You'll find tons of applications, and mostly they are getting, approved now by the central banks all over the world. So I don't want to nominate because I don't want to consider that as advertising for any kind of them, but yes, just open your mobile and search on the store, you will find a lot. That helps a lot the ecosystem for the small, medium enterprises organizations, because I believe that the GDR now for any country is considered by those kind of businesses, because 2 or 3 businesses in a year, if they boom up and they made a huge growth, that will help again the GDR for any country. So yes, it helps.
Wonderful. Again, a great answer. And open banking is then definitely not just helping individuals or SMEs, but also nations to grow. Let's ask Zeeshan. Zeeshan, what do you think are the main tactics fintech apps should use for user acquisition?
So today, in the digital world, when it comes to fintech apps, there are 3 main verticals of user acquisition. One is Google, other is social, and third one is networks. All these have their pros and cons. The main difference between Google, Meta, and networks is the quality of traffic and your ability to monetize, optimize the campaigns is up to what extent, and also how much of control you have over spending. So generally, we divide the traffic sources. We put Google and social at one vertical and network in the other vertical. In Google and social, generally, when you're doing user acquisition for fintech apps, you spend first, and then you optimize your campaigns as per your goals, like CPI, cost per install, cost per registration. And when it comes to investment apps, we work with Crypto.com, Binance, and so on and so forth. So with them, you optimize the campaigns on cost per deposit or cost per transaction. When it comes to network with agencies like us, we work on 100% performance model where, and there are few agencies also in the world who do that, and where we run the campaigns in-app inventory, tapping into the right kind of traffic sources, which can target users who would be interested to open a new bank account, let's say, through one of the neo banking apps, or would be interested to do some investment and trade with some stocks or buy some Bitcoin or something. So when it comes to user acquisition, there are 3 main verticals, social, Google, and network, and any fintech app should use all 3 in their own way and with the right weightage.
Definitely, and I believe your firm helps with those type of optimizations.
Yes, this is what we do.
Certainly, great. Coming back to you, Mohamed, I'm very interested to learn, what do you think are some successful examples of open banking implementations and collaborations that have led to innovative financial products and services?
So, if you don't mind, just repeat the question, because I just want to link it between this one and the previous one.
Sure.
Yes.
I'll repeat my question. What are some successful examples of open banking implementations and collaborations that have led to innovative financial products and services? I know we have talked a little bit about it,
yes,
but if we can...
But now I have to declare some
names. I think it will help the audience, so please go ahead.
Okay, let's speak about Binance. Binance has came with an innovative idea back days, and they are trying to do their best to come to the Middle East and to get approved by the central banks and to help the ecosystem. Now Binance has a very great story into the market. So people were thinking that Binance is only an application where people can just only buy Bitcoin or digital currencies. But people are into now stock market. They know how Binance is very strong. So even for the small traders or the small investors, they can now do money and do transactions. And as you mentioned, now you can even pay using Binance or other applications. Yes. So not only for the small traders or small investors, but also for the companies, they are trying to make life much more easier. I will give another example, which is the e-dirham. Yes, in UAE. Before the digital currencies, and people to know about the digital currencies, UAE government has initiated the e-dirham before to make all the users, especially with the governments, using such kind of cards or the platforms to pay all the government transactions. So simply you go to any bank, just add some money into your e-dirham wallet and you can use it. So now they are working to enhance the e-dirhams to become a fully digital currency. And I think, yes, one last thing which people are sitting here in front of me, the white shark, they are providing the best solution now into the market. They're coming now to UAE. They will launch a very important product and services. They are sitting here inside, so I would love everybody in the room to go just pay a visit and learn from them, because what they are providing is something fabulous and will help the full ecosystem into Middle East.
Definitely. I think I'm going to go and pay them a visit now. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing these success stories with us and what they have been able to create and the changes that they are making, which obviously can be used as examples by the innovators in today's world. So my final question is to you, Saumya. Just to conclude, for open banking to be a global phenomena, who do you think should take the lead in implementation? Should it be the regulators or the fintech companies or the banks?
I believe, and I guess panelists have also listed down a lot of new players that I never thought are part of the ecosystem also. So I think it's a joint and concerted effort of regulators, traditional incumbent banks, fintech players, and even the players supporting the new fintech industry, right? It's a joint effort by all of them that can help in successful implementation of open banking. And when we come to regulators, they need to provide with a framework that can guide the new players in the industry and how data sharing can be done, how information sharing can be done, and how the collaboration can be more beneficial for all the parties involved. Similarly, traditional banks need to embrace the concept of open banking quite more rigidly, and they being an experienced player in this industry for long, so they can share their expertise on how they have evolved through this digital era. That expertise can be shared, so that role they can play there. And even the fintech players, we know they have an expertise in technology and the implementation of technology. So I think they also have a great role to play. But when we see the implementation of this open banking globally, it is kind of two-factor ways wherein this has evolved. One is more of a market-driven approach, and other is more a regulatory-driven approach. So in an economy of like Hong Kong and Australia, they have a open API framework which kind of govern how the open APIs need to be implemented. They have proper information system sharing procedures. They have transaction information sharing procedures, payment initiating services procedures. So it's quite laid down in black and white there. But when it comes to different geographies like India, Singapore, though there is no compulsorily open API banking framework, But yes, the regulators have often given a kind of measures that kind of accelerated the, or have promoted open banking in their respective jurisdictions. So I guess it's not a one-player game for sure. The benefits are derived by many. So definitely it's a joint effort by everyone.
Certainly, very rightly mentioned that a joint effort towards a more centralized goal is the need of the hour. While the regulators are busy making policy frameworks, the banks should join hands with fintech companies and work toward implementation. We look forward to a more global dialogue in this space so there can be streamlined changes implemented across the globe. I'd like to leave our audience with a fact. Or a couple of facts. So there are 3 types of implementations that are happening in today's world. And I'm going to leave you with a website which you can visit to learn about these implementations and how they are happening in today's global framework. So the first type of implementation that is happening is regulators-driven, which starts by policymakers having a discussion and regulators coming and laying down a framework which needs to be followed, and then they issue guidelines for the banks to follow, and then open banking is then just happening in due course. Then there are certain countries which are opting for PSD2, which is the Payment Service Directive compliant approach. And also the third type is where countries don't have a framework laid out, but the banks are individually or as a collective effort are doing these implementations on their own just to enhance the services that they have to offer and to be relevant in today's world. But definitely, open banking is something which doesn't necessarily, it definitely starts from the developed world, but it cannot end with the developed world, because the people or the companies that need to be impacted by it, or who are going to have the best impact of this kind of open banking, are the ones who are there in the developing nations. And I think what can also happen, that all these 3 approaches can be collectively discussed at a global platform, and each country then can come up with certain frameworks that can be locally followed. So I would just like to leave you with the website that I was talking about. It's called www.openbankingmap.com. It will give you a fair idea of what's happening in today's world in this area. And with this, I would like to thank all our panelists for joining us today and for this wonderful discussion.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lovely asking you questions and learning so much from your areas of expertise. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a lovely evening.